James Pierce is not the most important defender on Tennessee's team. Will, am I insane?
No, you're not. You're not at all. I don't think so at all. I think the linebacking play, I would say Keenan Pili is the number one guy. Part of it, you just have depth up front. And I've always said I would rather have depth. Like if I was putting an NFL roster together, I would much rather have depth than have the one guy, right? Like and to be able to rotate those dudes in. Tennessee has the depth where you haven't needed a lot out of Pierce. I do think you still want him to show up in a big moment. I think he has affected blocking, but I don't think he's the most important guy right now. I think Keenan Pili probably is the most important guy. Part of that's what just that Missouri game is ingrained into my brain. Watching Tennessee's linebackers dive at Cody Schrader's ankles because they didn't want any. And Keenan Pili is not a guy that's not going to step into the alley and hit somebody. He's going to step in the alley and put a shoulder pad in somebody.
Okay, but let me ask you this. Are we undervaluing James's Pierce, and you referenced it, effect on blocking schemes? Because basically everybody else on the other side of Pierce has had a sack. I think there's like, I counted them up, there's 1,800 of them. And Pierce has had a couple of pressures and almost a sack. So I'm kind of arguing against myself, but I do think he's had a massive effect on these games, even though he doesn't have a sack yet.
No, he's had a very nice effect on the games. He's done a good job setting the edge, in the run game, which is something that I thought last year was a little lacking for him, and I feel like he's figured that side of playing the position out. One thing that Tennessee's defensive line's doing, and Overstreet said it on Pennington's show. I got to tip my cap to him, and then I finally found a way to get some all-22 the last two games. They're playing as a unit incredibly well. And so it's not just freelance, get uphill, get north and south, get into the backfield and wreak havoc. They're playing within a unit, funneling everything from a running game into the inside, and that allows the linebackers to make blocks. So he's doing things that are beyond just wreaking havoc, but he has not wreaked the same level of havoc, though, even when he's one-on-one so far for Tennessee. So, and look, the part of that was last year. We saw some of that too. You saw, especially when Tennessee had injuries on the defensive line. And if you remember, they used to do almost like a line change in hockey where they just run the four out, run four more on to make sure guys were fresh. Once they weren't able to do that because of the injuries they dealt with, you saw James Pierce numbers dip. And so I do think that it's tough for him to stay on the field for that long. But the way he's affecting the game in the running game, the way he is making them have to have that tight end chip a little bit and bring another person there. Like I've talked to people and even friends of mine that are in the media that are like, oh, he's double, triple teamed every block. And I'm like, no, it's not, man. No, that's not happening. And so, but he is still affecting the game and he's playing within the system of the game. And I think that does still make him incredibly valuable to what Tennessee's doing.
So you would say that the player most behind Tennessee's defensive dominance is Keenan Pili, right?
The player, I would say yes. I would say the player. The problem is, again, I watched Tennessee's defensive line be really good last year. Now, I wouldn't say elite. Right now, they're playing at an elite level. But that's another year of working with Rodney Gardner, another year of being in the strength and conditioning program. But how many times did you watch those linebackers run themselves out of plays last year? Or that pass off, the Alabama game, the third quarter, that handoff with the slot receiver from linebacker to safety. They hit him like 5 times with it in the second half, 3 times that set up scores in the third quarter of that game alone, and it crushed them. The Missouri game, over and over and over again. It's Cody Schrader. I mean, he's just running outside zone, man. We all know what's coming. I'm watching it, and I know what's coming. And I'm sitting at my house in Knoxville, Tennessee. And the linebacker, how does the linebacker not know? Or if he did know, why did he try to run around the play and dive at somebody's ankles? To me, like that, you can be a lead up front, and if your linebackers don't want to hit somebody, you end up in a bad situation. So that's why I think it's Pili.
Okay,
yes, so
go ahead, Caleb. The poll question is hilarious, by the way, and the response to it, but go ahead.
So throw this out. Engage me on this. Because I am mostly somewhat with you on Keenan Pili. I totally agree. And by the way, Arian Carter, let's not sleep on him too, who's been just as effective on the outside. What do you think of me saying Jermod McCoy? Because I feel like Jermod McCoy is shutting down one entire side of the field right now for Tennessee, which allows him so much flexibility to do everything else defensively.
It also takes away something that has been a weakness the entire time Josh Heupel's been there, which is one of those corner positions has been just a screen door. You know what I mean? Like all you have to do is just run through it and you'll be fine. And Tennessee, and a lot of it, man, talking to some guys on the staff, one thing that they thought was there were some good players they had that were smart players. They were just too slow. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, you got corners running 4.7s. That's not going to get it done for you at an SEC level. So I don't think that's unfair to say Jermod McCoy, because if you, again, it's the first year since Heupel's been there, you don't have that one corner position where somebody can just throw the ball up and make a play. Remember the Kentucky game last year when Devin Leary goes nuts. There was one safety they were throwing the ball at every dang play. They were just picking on him. Against A&M. A&M was they were just picking on that same safety. Alabama was picking on the other safety. We saw the Kentucky game with the year Levis had the numbers and Tennessee squeaked that one out. They were picking on they're picking on Warren Burrell, right? So it's eliminated. You had the big things. They don't have that weakness, and I think McCoy's probably the strongest of those players.
So my poll question in retrospect is idiotic. Will Tennessee's most important defender is James Pierce, Keenan Pili, Will Brooks, someone else. I wanted to see if Will Brooks would get a vote. He has not gotten one vote. Keenan Pili running away with it. Give Will Brooks some love, somebody. James Pierce, number 2, someone else. That someone else would include Arian Carter. And I'm 99% sure you pointed out to me, and just an off-the-record conversation, so we don't have to go in depth with it, but that Carter actually with an older player was at an event and this guy was not paying attention like he should. And Arian Carter was like, get your stuff together. That was you that told me that, right?
Yeah. That was, it was at an event. A bunch of players were there, and a senior last year was kind of being a knucklehead, not doing anything stupid or bad or anything like that, or criminal or like just being kind of silly. And Arian Carter popped him and said, look a man in the eye and talk straight when you talk to a man, when he was talking to me. And I'm like, oh, that's a freshman, dude. That's what I'm saying. That dude he has a different level of mental energy, I think, and focus than most humans out there in the world have.
Yeah. I don't know what was wrong with that guy, Caleb, but portions of the program are brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com, Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off, HOOK for 10% off. Caleb, I'm sure that you're not affected by anything at this current moment, so why don't you take it away?
I'm affected by Dayquil and lots of it.
Yeah. we got Caleb playing hurt today, so
I have the y'all know that being a man with a cold is as painful as childbirth, right? So it's like
absolutely true.
I mean, like,
man cold's real.
Man cold is real. It is worse than childbirth. I told my wife that the other day, and she didn't agree. But it's okay. So let's get to the defensive line, because Tennessee's defensive line is deep. It's elite. It's athletic. The interior defensive line. What do you think of saying maybe Amari Thomas is the engine of that whole group that makes it go? Because he's the lead. He is the leader of the group. I mean, I don't know any time a defensive tackle has gone to SEC Media Days twice, maybe John Henderson back in the day, but I'm not even sure that. Even though he may not be the most physically gifted, would you say he's the most important in terms of galvanizing all the guys to play together the way they do?
I think so, because I do think part of it is when norman-lott got there and they saw that, hey, he's better at interior pass rush. When Amari Thomas saw that, he said, hey, everybody listen to this guy and show us the things you don't know. Things like that, like having that kind of leadership, I think absolutely matters. Now, again, I think it's the depth of dudes, not necessarily the single dude. But if you wanted to point to one guy, the leadership, everybody getting behind that one guy, I think is invaluable for Tennessee. Part of it, too, though, is look at the guys they've had that we kind of didn't talk a lot about the last 2 years. They were Amari Thomas was a highly sought-after guy, right? And then, I mean, Tyree West, you took him from Georgia. You know what I mean? Like, he was going to go to Georgia. So you have talented dudes that other teams wanted and other schools wanted. Frankly, James Pierce might have been the one that had the fewest committable offers from big-time universities. If you look at the recruiting on that front line, I know, Dave, you guys are more into recruiting probably than I am.
Not anymore.
but it's a that's a talented group, and they do get behind Amari Thomas and they follow what he says, and it kind of sets the standard for what they're going to do and what they're going to be. And I think when they've seen a guy who's in his 5th, 6th year, I think Amari Thomas has been there since about 2017. But when they see a guy like that say, hey, let's do this, I think everybody does I don't want to say fall in line. I don't mean it like insulting at all, but I do think they get in line behind what Omari Thomas does. And I think it speaks to the work that they put in, how they listen to each other, playing to each other, playing to their own strengths. I do think Omari Thomas is the one that I would point to.
Okay, now what about, I want to make an argument, and you can call me out on it, but you have a secondary that hasn't been tested yet. Will Brooks is the back end of that. He made an incredible play against NC State that took the soul from the Wolfpack. Just for funsies, Will Brooks is Tennessee's most important defensive player, last line of defense. What do you say, Peyton Manning?
They're like, that is total bullshit.
Okay, well, Will, what do you think?
No, man. Look, I God bless them. So here's the other side of it too. We haven't seen Tennessee you're right. We haven't seen Tennessee secondary tested. At this point, though, I don't think anyone needs to apologize for Tennessee or where Tennessee is, because NC State was a ranked team and you went and played them. Well, all of a sudden, Grayson McCall can't run the thing the offensive coordinator wants to run. And so, and in that Western Carolina game, the fourth quarter, they adjusted to run what Grayson McCall can do. Against Tennessee, nope, this is what we run. And every game since then, and it's gone super well for them since that happened. So it was like you were tested against Grayson McCall. Kent State is literally the worst team in FBS football. Then you take on Oklahoma, and they benched Jackson Arnold, and he struggled for most of the year. We did see in the first half of that Tulane game what Jackson Arnold can do, and I don't know why, again, Seth Luttrell and Brent Venables didn't adjust to that, but they didn't adjust to that. So the secondary hasn't been tested, and I think also that pass rush does not give people a lot of time. So if you have long developing routes and things like that, it's going to be a problem. So, but I think they're good. I don't know how great they are. They're really nice in press. If you're looking at the All-22, that's one thing that kind of like stood out to me last week when I first looked at the All-22 was, man, they're pretty strong in press. So I think that's good, but I don't know how good the secondary necessarily is, because, I mean, the two quarterbacks that they faced that were supposed to be good have been benched at this point.